Hi, my name is Cedric. Welcome to another week of AI Decoded. This week, I want to start off by talking about X, formerly known as Twitter. They recently made some changes to their terms and conditions, allowing them to track data about you, like for example, your job history and your education. Now, that's probably insignificant to you, and I understand that because platforms like LinkedIn do that as well. Now, the thing is, they also made another change last week, which allows them to use any data on the platform to train AI models. Obviously, this is a powerful combination because you can imagine that a platform that is used mostly to express your personal beliefs and your political values, together with a lot of personal data, can train a very powerful AI model for policymakers, for people that are, for example, in an election campaign. And if you like it or not, Musk has been a lot more vocal about his personal politics, and he has expressed some sponsorship or personal endorsement about certain politicians. Now, if he chooses to provide access to this model only to a set of politicians, this can really provide him with an unfair advantage, similar to what we saw with the Russian interference in the last cycle. And Musk has actually confirmed those claims. He said that they will only use public data, that they won't use private data like DMs. But obviously, I think this is still too powerful. And again, this is showing a sign that we might need to think of a broader regulation framework, especially when it comes to AI used for politics. And that immediately brings us to the second story about China. They were very quick to come up with a regulatory framework about generative AI. They basically said that if you want to build LLM applications for public use, you have to make sure that they adhere to the CCP's core values. And on top of that, you also have to get a license from them to be able to use that model in China. This license grants the CCP access to your entire model, the training set, the size, the architecture. So basically, if you want to launch a model in China, you give them access to the core technology. And even though they didn't really clearly define who has to get such a license, a lot of parties are not eager to join the Chinese market with their products because of fear of losing their core competencies. Now, that didn't stop 8 local providers to register their applications. 2 of them are by Baidu and ByteDance. And actually, just after their acceptance, Ernie from Baidu became the most popular free app in the iOS store. And this shows that the local population is excited to get access to similar tools as well. Finally, I want to talk about OpenAI. There were multiple stories coming from the company this week, starting with the announcement of their new enterprise plan for ChatGPT. I don't understand what all the fuss is about, to be honest, because a lot of companies, like I mentioned in one of the last videos, for example, McKinsey and AXA, are building their own private, secure versions of ChatGPT for their employees. And there seems to be not much difference. So they said the core functionalities will be user control, more analytics, the ability to share templates across employees, but nothing that fundamentally changes the way you use the technology, in my opinion, at least. Now, I'm eager to see where this will be going. Obviously, there's very talented people working on this part of the business, and it will be fundamental in achieving their 1 billion revenue target for 2024. However, I think there needs to be more distinction between what companies are already doing today and what features they're implementing in their enterprise version, to make sure that people actually want to switch. Also, there was a story suggesting a drop in usage of ChatGPT. The data comes from SimilarWeb and it tracks the use of the web app. We see a decline from May to June of 9.7%. And also in combination with that, average time spent on the website is decreasing with 8% for the same period. Now, I think there's multiple reasons for this, and none of them suggest that people are actually using ChatGPT less. They launched their iOS app, so I can imagine a lot of people that spend a lot of time on their phone are using it on their phone instead of the web app. Also, people are building private versions. Companies, I mean, are building private versions for their employees that use APIs or that are hosted in Azure. And then finally, a lot of companies are also building specific tools on GPT that are more tailored to a specific use case. And I imagine a lot of people are starting to explore these tools and using them instead of the original ChatGPT. So how I read this is basically students went on a holiday, they didn't use ChatGPT as much as before, and this starting semester in September is going to bring back the usage to a normal height. Final story about OpenAI is one that I personally really like a lot. They invested in a company called Speak. It's basically an AI tutor that helps you learn languages. They started with English and they mostly started in the Asian market, and they've actually been hugely successful. In Korea, it's estimated that 6% of the population, so that's 3 million people, used the app to train their English skills. Now, the thing is, they got funding from OpenAI, and this allowed them also to get priority access to GPT 3.5, GPT 4, and they claimed this was a deal breaker, that with GPT 4, they were able to provide much more personalized learning experience and context to their users, to really allow them to have a conversation with an AI bot in another language that they're not that familiar with and learn from it. And I think if you are following this space a little bit, you can really imagine that the combination of GPT-4 and Whisper, which is their API that allows them to change text into speech and speech into text, that combination is lethal in education. I've been using tools like Duolingo myself to learn Spanish, and one of the core capabilities that was lacking for me was the ability to speak. And Speak, the application, has found a way to overcome this. Now, the reason that I'm really excited about this is not only because obviously this will make learning a language a lot easier, but this also provides a clear framework for educational companies that want to build around AI. And I think really the exciting part is that this will really democratize access to quality education. The moment that we can make AI tutors that are at par with the best human tutors, all of a sudden everybody might get access to those tutors, and this will really take away the inequality in education that we have across the globe. Finally, I want to leave you with a little tip if you're building automations on top of GPT-4. Basically, how your cost is calculated is that for every input and output, the longer it gets, you need more tokens, and those tokens have a price. The thing is, the output is more expensive than the inputs, and so it's actually very valuable to limit the amount of characters that is used in the output. Now, somebody on LinkedIn showed a very clever way to do that if you're using JSON files in your output. You can actually ask the system to minimize it, and it will provide the code without any unnecessary symbols and spacing, and this can actually lead up to 80% cost reduction. The reason that it uses spacing in the first place is mostly to allow humans to read that code more easily. But the thing is that this JSON file is often an in-between step in your automation. And so it doesn't really have to be read by humans. Now, I found this actually quite clever, and this might not be applicable to what you're doing today, but you might find yourself other ways that you can save costs when you're using that API. And I encourage you to look for ways to do that. And I'll be doing that myself. And maybe we can share some tips in the future to see how we can optimize our OpenAI bill. So this was another week of AI Decoded. I hope to see you next week in another episode.